guys, this is Kata, and in this video I want to recommend you some books. So what I'm going to do is recommend you a book from A to Z. So one book with the title that starts with an A, another book with the title that starts with a B, and so on and so forth. And if I couldn't find a book title for a particular letter, I tried to find a book that I really enjoyed, whose author's either first name or last name starts with that particular letter. And if I couldn't even find that, then I just chose a book in which title or the author's name we have that letter somewhere. And I tried to pick books that are kind of less known, so not the very hyped up books that everyone already knows about, but in some cases I needed to choose those books as well because I love them and I couldn't find anything else that I really enjoyed, because that's another thing. I try to pick books that I really loved, because I think all of these are 5 stars books, because I just didn't see the point in choosing books that I just enjoyed and that's all. I really wanted to show you the books that I loved. If after watching my video you feel like you want to do a video just like this, then I would be really happy to watch your video too, because everyone loves book recommendations and just finding new books to love and read. And yeah, without further ado, let's start with the letter A. So for the letter A, I have chosen A Different Blue by Amy Harmon, which is a contemporary book, a little bit not so light-hearted, not so fluffy contemporary, but a really amazing one. And this story follows a girl called Blue, who is this 19-20 years old high school student, and she has been abandoned at the age of 2, so she doesn't really have any family but the guy who basically raised her, even though he's not her relative. And Blue is this tough girl, or she acts like a tough girl, and she has her problems, a lot of problems, but on the first day of her senior year maybe, she meets this guy who is basically her teacher at high school, and they start to form this relationship, but it's like friendship. And this story is just so beautiful, and I love how it centers around a relationship. It doesn't have to be a love, but just that you have somebody to count on and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm talking way too much about this, but if you love contemporary, meaningful contemporary, then I would really recommend that you check this book out. For the letter B, I have Bully by Penelope, which is a new adult contemporary book in which we have 2 frenemies. So they started out as friends, basically best friends, but after one summer, one of our main characters, Jared, comes back from his father, and he starts to ignore Tate, our female character, and Tate doesn't know what happened and why he started to ignore her. And even more, he doesn't only ignore her, he bullies her, he picks on her, he makes fun of her, and she just doesn't know why he does that. And this is a very angsty book, so there's a lot of angst and drama and tears and frustration and sexual tension and all that great stuff. And I personally like some angst in my romance, so if you're like me, then you would really enjoy this book as well, I think. For the letter C, I have chosen Catching Jordan by Miranda, and I have recently read this book, which is a contemporary book. So again, if you love contemporary, I would really recommend this book to you. And in this story we have Jordan, who is high school senior, I'm not sure, but she is in the football team and she is the quarterback, which is not so typical for a girl. But one day a guy transfers to her school and he is also a quarterback, so that kind of creates some problems. But this story is, it's not so typical, and I just love that about it, because you cannot really know how it will end, and it's so wonderful and just so funny and so good. For the letter D, I have chosen Darkfever by Moning, and this is the first book in the Fever series, which consists of 5 books, and all those 5 books are just so good, so damn good. And the first book, Darkfever, it's not the best in the series, it's kind of the setup for the whole series, but it's a wonderful, action-packed, just unique adult urban fantasy / paranormal series. And it has one of the most unique words that I have ever read about, And anyways, this story follows a girl called Mac, and she is this very bubbly, very outgoing, very just a fun girl. But one day her sister dies in Ireland, and her sister leaves her a very cryptic phone message, a voicemail, and because of that Mac decides to travel to Dublin, I think, to shed some light on what happened to her sister. And on this journey she meets Barons, who is this very, very mysterious, dark and handsome guy who I adore so much. One of the best characters ever written in a book, and it's very suspenseful, this series, and it's just everything that I want, even though I wish it had a little bit more romance, but it's just the way it is, and I love all of these books. They are perfect. And for the letter E, I have chosen Easy by Tammara, which is this young adult / new adult contemporary book that I need to reread already. But in this story we have Jacqueline, who is a freshman at college, and her boyfriend broke up with her just before starting college, which is obviously a little bit hard for her. And also one night she gets into this incident from which Lucas, this guy from her class, saves her, and that starts the whole premise of this book. And yeah, if you love, again, contemporary, I think you will really enjoy this one. For the letter F, I have Finding Home by Lauren Baker and Bonnie D, and this is an adult, new adult, I don't know how to categorize this book, because this story is about a woman called Megan, I think. I'm not really sure, but she works as a journalist for a newspaper, and she wants to write this article about prostitution on the streets, especially the male prostitution. So she goes out to the streets and she wants to, interview some of those guys who work as prostitutes. I can't pronounce that word. I'm sorry. But yeah, there she meets this guy called Mafi, and she gets to talk to him. She kind of gets to know him, and it's I didn't really think that I would ever read something like this, and it talks a lot about the prostitution aspect of this. So what he does to earn his money, and the language in it is quite out there. And if you are one to shy away from sexual language and stuff like that, then I wouldn't really recommend this book to you. And this book also deals with the age difference between the two main characters that can cause some issues. But I love this story so much. I already reread it, but I want to reread it again. For the letter G, I have The Golden Lily by Richelle Mead, which is the second book in the Bloodline series, which is a spin-off series to Vampire Academy. Yeah, that's quite a mouthful, and I can't really talk about this book either, because this is the second book in the trilogy. It's a series, but so far it's my favorite book in the whole series, because stuff happens in this book finally, and I was so happy to read some of these scenes and then reread those scenes. But yeah, I cannot really say anything about the Bloodline series either in general, because that would spoil Vampire Academy. But you need to read both the Vampire Academy and the Bloodline series, because they are phenomenal, and I just love Richelle Mead to death. For the letter H, I have chosen The Host by Stephenie Meyer, which is one of my all-time favorite books ever. And I think most of you have heard about this book, either the book or the movie that was based on it. And I don't really want to talk a lot about it, because I feel like you know this, but I will have to say that it's not so easy to read at the very beginning, because I started it once, but I couldn't get past like 60 pages because I just had no idea what the hell was happening. But I'm so happy that I gave this book another go, because for the second time I just flew through this book so fast, because I loved every single thing about this. If you get past the first 100 pages, then it's so amazing. It's like perfection. And it's one of my favorite stories about just love and friendship and acceptance. And this book has one of my favorite romances of all time. And I know some people are kind of hesitant to still read this book just because of the author, who is Stephenie Meyer, who has written the Twilight series, which I personally love, but not a lot, but a lot of people hate it. So they decided to not read this book, which is a huge mistake, because even I can admit that the Host is a lot better written than the Twilight series. So yeah, just read the Host already. For the letter I have chosen Ignite Me by Tahereh Mafi, which is the third and final book in the Shatter Me trilogy. So I obviously not going to talk about a lot about this book because it would spoil the trilogy, but this is definitely my favorite book in the series. And if you have not yet started Shatter Me, then please read this series, and also read the novellas, and in the right order, because they add, or at least one of the novellas really add to this story, and it's just so amazing. And if you have heard about this book, this series, then you know that the writing is just one of a kind and absolutely amazing. And yeah, I cannot really say anything about Ignite Me, but it's so good, so very good. For the letter J, I couldn't find a book title that started with a J, but I found an author whose name started with a J, so I chose Flat Out Love by Jessica Park. And I really want to recommend this book to all of you, because I have never seen anybody talk about this, even though it's such an amazing contemporary book. And this story follows a girl called Julie who moves to Boston, and she had a plan for an apartment, but it kind of fell through. So her mother's college friend, I think, invites her to live with her and her family. And you know, this is a kind of chaotic family in a way that it's kind of dysfunctional. The parents are very distant and just they focus on their careers. And we have the middle children, who is Matt, who is this, you know, very geeky guy, who all about computers and stuff like that. And we have 13-year-old girl called Celeste, who is kind of weird in a way that she carries around a giant, what's that called? A giant cutout of her older brother, who is Finn. So she carries around this life-sized cutout of her brother. And Julie, you know, kind of doesn't know why that is and what's going on in this family. And they tell her that Finn is traveling, so that's why Celeste is carrying around that cutout, because she misses him. It started out as an okay book, it was good, but you know, nothing special. But at one point it just changed dramatically, and it's so amazing, so amazing. And I need to reread it very soon because I want to relive this book again. For the letter K, I couldn't find a book title that started with a K, but I found an author whose first and last name also starts with a K, and that is Kody Keplinger, with her book called The Duff. And I have already talked about this book a lot. I also have a review about this, so I will link that in the down bar if you're interested. But this is another contemporary book, but it's so very different from all the other contemporaries that I have read, because the main character in this is not your typical girl in a contemporary book, because she's sassy, she's funny, she's outgoing-ish, and yeah, she's not your damsel in distress, and I really like that about her. One night she gets into this, not fight, but just argument with this guy, who is the player in her high school, basically, and they start to have this little romance, which is not really romance, it's more like just the physical stuff. But then emotion starts to get also involved, and which will create drama, which I loved. And if you haven't read The Duff yet, please do it now. For the letter L, I have Last Sacrifice by Richelle Mead, which is the 6th and final book in the Vampire Academy series, which is I think my all-time favorite series ever. It's one of the best conclusions to a series that I have ever read. And I can't really talk about this exact book in the series without spoiling anything for the whole series. And I think most of you know about the Vampire Academy series, but it's just one of the best action-packed, kick-ass vampire series that I have ever read about, with one of the best main characters and also the best romance in a young adult book that I have ever read. So if you have not started the Vampire Academy, then you need to get on it because it's so good. For the letter M, I have Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. And again, I have talked about this book a lot, but I cannot recommend this book to all of you enough because it's so wonderful. It's an adult contemporary book, but it deals with very important issues. And this story is basically about a young woman called Lou, and she is going to be the caretaker of Will, who got into an accident, a motorcycle accident, and because of that he is paralyzed from the neck down, I think. So he cannot do anything on his own, basically, and he doesn't want to live anymore. But Lou doesn't let him get depressed. She wants him to still live his life. But it's a struggle, and you understand both of their point of views, why he doesn't want to live and why Lou wants him to live. And it's just a very gripping story, and it's very emotional, but it's so amazing. And I think all of you should really read it, even though if you're not a fan of adult books or contemporaries. It's just a wonderful story. It starts out a bit not weird, but it just wasn't my kind of book at the very beginning, but then it grips you and you just can't let this book go. You need to read it in one sitting. So yeah, Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. For the letter U, I have Unearthly by Cynthia Hand, and this is an angel story done freaking right.